Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Smarter Project Management with Visual Connections, from personal events to business deliverables, getting it all done in the brain. My name is Matt Caton. Thanks again for joining me today. We've got a really great webinar planned, one that is of particular interest to me because it's all about project management. And project management can mean many different things to many different people, whether you are the project manager for your business environment, projects that you're working on for work or with teams within your organization, or project management in your personal life, a weekend camping trip with the kids, vacation planning, or just simple personal finance and day-to-day tasks that need to be achieved and managed digitally. The brain is a great option for you to really oversee all of your project management needs. Now, I go through life as a project manager, whether I am planning a vacation with my family, weekend activities, or designing a new website or working with clients at the office. I keep track of everything inside my brain, and I manage it through many of the different utilities that the brain application has specifically designed for project management. In fact, the brain is utilized by the author, David Allen, of Getting Things Done, a very popular book that came out a few years back and still remains incredibly relevant to this day. The GTD community, or Getting Things Done community, really rely on the brain as their trusted source for all of their information, tasks that need to be completed, contact numbers and information, data, files, etc. One location to go to acquire all of that information. And that's really what the brain is all about. It's your digital brain. If it's a piece of information, whether it's a phone number, a password, a checklist, or even dates where particular events need to be achieved or acquired, that can all happen in the brain. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm sharing a brain on the screen right now that I'd like to introduce to you, because at the completion of today's webinar, everyone will receive an email with a link where they can watch a recording of today's webinar and even download a sample brain. And this is the brain that we'll be offering. So you can actually download this particular brain database and extract it into your own brain and use it as a sandbox, a playground for you to get familiar with the technology, or actually start adding and editing the information to make it sort of the basis, the root of your own brain that you'll be developing. And so this brain has got some sample ideas of different types of projects that can be monitored and activated and edited within the brain application. I'll then jump from this brain to my own personal brain. I'd like to make a sort of a holiday themed webinar today. So one of my upcoming projects that I'm managing is just the holidays with my family. So I'll be jumping into my own personal brain, where I'll share with you some of how I keep track of different parties that my wife and I will be going to, cooking that we'll be doing over the holidays, gift buying, etc., all happening within the brain. So first, let's take a quick high-level overview of my current project's brain. Pieces of information in the brain are what we call thoughts. And anytime I click on a thought, the thought moves itself into the center of the plex and displays all related information around it. So anytime I click on a thought, that becomes the current active thought. The focus of my brain is right now the current active thought marketing campaign. And so down below, I've got all the subcategories, and I can continue on clicking down through my brain until I find the individual files that I'm looking for, or the person, or the phone number, etc. So I've got ad copy, deadlines, advertising, budget, etc. Now this, again, is a very vanilla brain, a very basic brain structure that you can play with and add on to. So I don't have a whole lot of content in this brain, but content can easily be added and will always appear over on the right in the content area. So notes and file attachments will be displayed. And this area can be rearranged depending on what works best for you. If I want my content area below the Plex, there's a couple of very easy settings or easy buttons to access. I can click and make the notes and data that happen in this brain. So here's a Word document, for example. As you can see, shows up as a tab and is easily accessible and can be launched right here from the content window. So I double click, this launches Microsoft Word and opens up my add copy document that I happen to be working on. Now, additionally, let me click back. Many thoughts can have notes associated with them. So I'm going to jump back. Before I go there, let's talk a little bit more about the other layouts or the other areas of connected thoughts within the brain. I'll go back to my side-by-side view. As I mentioned, thoughts below, the subcategories, we refer to those as child thoughts. Up above, we have what we call parent thoughts. In other words, the current active thought has, in this case, two parent thoughts. And this is something that really differentiates the brain from a typical file and folder type of structure. If you are doing all of your project management in files and folders, I'm sure you'll come across and encounter a scenario when something falls into multiple categories. It's a document that's related to two different clients. Do you copy that document and put it in two different folders? Do you create a shortcut? Because if you do create a shortcut, how do you know when you get to that particular file that it's also associated with another client or with another person or what have you? There's no visual way to represent that relationship or those relationships within a file and folder structure. And here we can see that a marketing campaign is not only one of my current projects, but it also falls under business development, another category that I have within my brain. So multiple parent thoughts can be associated with an individual thought. Over on the right are my sibling thoughts. These are thoughts that share some of the same parent thoughts. And finally, over on the left, I have what we call a jump thought. And a jump thought is something that's related to the active thought, but doesn't necessarily fit in as a subcategory. So here's Sarah. She's an expert in marketing at my organization. So I have her actually linked under the expert category. So I can easily get to Sarah's thought from multiple locations as well, whether I'm going and looking through my employees that are experts in particular fields, or if I go to the field first, I can see that Sarah is my expert for that project. And let's talk a little bit more about the attachments over on the right. Once again, you notice that anytime I have a document, that document is easily accessible from the attachment tab over on the right-hand side of the screen. But I can also have notes associated with a thought as well. And notes are a really, really important part of project management in specifically. Obviously, we're keeping notes, meeting notes, notes on people, notes with ideas that we have, or simply tasks that need to be completed with additional details about each step along the way. And that can all happen in the brain's notes tab. And it's really great that we can associate our individual notes with actual documents and files. In this case, I've gone to a completely different area of my brain. I'm looking at kitchen renovations, a more personal project that I may be working on. And down below, I've got different types of kitchen suppliers, parts list, kitchen designs, etc., renovation budget. Not only do I have my actual budget documents over on the right, but in the notes, I can keep track of making sure I have enough left over for the, let's call it the launch party. I want to throw a big launch party once my kitchen is renovated. So for the launch party and, oops, and tile the bathroom. So just a couple of random ideas that I recently had. I'm looking at the budget, and when I'm so honed in and focused on the budget for my kitchen renovation, I might forget a couple of small details that I need budget left over for other parts of the house or other upcoming events, etc. So I can quickly just jot down a note. So anytime I'm sitting down with my family, with my wife, if I hire a supplier, a designer, etc., I'm reminded that in looking at the budget, I can't put all my eggs in one basket, so to speak. I need to have a little bit left over. And that's just a nice way to jot down a quick note on that particular topic. You'll notice as I start jumping around to other thoughts in my personal brain, different features of the notes that I really like and how often I use notes in association with the actual files that are attached to the document or the web links, etc. So, and that again is something that a typical file and folder structure cannot provide for you. If I had a marketing budget or a renovation budget in my kitchen remodel folder, and I had additional ideas or thoughts about the budget that aren't part of the budget itself, where do I keep that information if it's not actually going into the document? I'd have to have another document on the side, and it may get lost in the shuffle, etc. Here we're keeping all of our information in context in the same particular area. So again, this is just a sample brain that you can utilize. The information in here is not accurate, I would say. There are some interesting web pages, etc., but you might not be interested in diving, kitchen renovations, etc. But it's just a really great example that you can download and play around with to see different ways that we're keeping track of different projects in this particular brain. So let's go ahead now and jump into a real project that I'm working on and actually create some data together in my brain and show off some of the features that I really want to highlight today that will help you with any type of project, regardless of the subject matter. So I'm jumping into my own personal brain. This is my real brain that I keep track of all of my own personal interests, hobbies, family activities, etc. I keep another brain specifically for business. I keep those brains completely separate for many different reasons, but it's important to point out that you can create as many different brains as you'd like. So if you've got an upcoming project with work and you don't want to, I wouldn't necessarily say clutter your existing brain, but you want to keep this information separate because you're going to share it with a team of people. And if you put it in your own personal brain where you're also keeping track of your investments and bank records and passwords, etc., that's a brain that you might not want to share with a collaborative group of 12 or 15 other people. So therefore, create a separate brain. And you can always merge brains together at a later date or actually segment them out into smaller topic-specific brains. Those features are available to you as well. But this brain today, as I mentioned, I'm going to be on the holiday theme. So I'm going to go directly to my Christmas area. So Christmas 2018 falls under my Christmas thought, which falls under holidays, which falls under miscellaneous, etc. So I keep track of holidays that are important to me and all of the different tasks or responsibilities or action items that I have or research that I'm doing for those holidays. It all goes into my brain. So I have one trusted location to go to retrieve all of that information. So let's just start at the very top on my Christmas thought. You can see over on the right, I've got my 2018 checklist. So this is a very simple list that I put together every year. I'll probably just delete this content at the end of the year and type out my 2019. Sometimes I save the information, I archive it, I rename it, move it to a different area of the brain if I want to refer back to that later. So many times you'll see, even in this particular brain, I'll click around on a thought and you'll see some older dates, 2004 or 2010, what have you. It's just information that I'm keeping in my brain that shows up in a search from time to time. And it's really, really valuable too, because your digital brain never forgets. I can archive that information and get it out of the way, but it might show up in a search or I might wander across it and really find some valuable information there at some point in the future. But this, as you can see, is a checklist. So let's take a moment to really appreciate the simplicity and yet the the magnitude of effect that checklists have within the brain. I love checklists, and checklists are really, really important, I think in any project manager's uh, timeline or process. So a checklist really helps you stay focused and lets you know quite simply whether a particular task is completed or not, how many tasks are left, when tasks were completed, etc. So within the brain notes, you can see I've got the expanded buttons activated. This is an option in your preferences. If your notes look a little bit different than mine, you can go into preferences where you see the full expanded um, notes tab. So I'll actually go there now. If I click on options and preferences, there is an option for compact toolbar. I believe that's under behavior. And there it is. Use compact toolbar for notes. So by default, this will be checked, and it just makes the toolbars, all the features are still there. They're simply in drop-down menus. I like all the buttons available, so I uncheck that very, very simple little feature. And therefore, when I go into my brain, let's go down to another area. We'll say New Year's. Now, normally I would probably put this on the New Year's thought, but just for simplicity, I'll add it here. I can even change the formatting, give that a new title. And let's say I have a new checklist that I need to keep track of for things that need to happen for New Year's. I'm simply going to click on the checklist box. And the checklists behave in much the same way, excuse me, as your ordered or unordered list, a bulleted list. But instead it has a little checkbox for you to check off when that task is complete. So if I need to order fancy hats, noise makers, dinner reservations, as you can see, as I'm typing, sometimes things are underlined in red. So the brain notes also have a wonderful spell check feature built in as well. So very helpful for people such as myself, sort of the Windows, I guess you'd call us the Word generation, Microsoft Word, where Word spell checks everything for you. So regardless, I've got my checklist. When something is completed, I simply check it off the list. It's just such an important component of project management to be able to put everything down, just brainstorm. Here's everything that we need to do. You can come back and add on at any time. You can check things off the list. And here's another great component. If I want to keep track of when an action item actually took place, again, also very important in project management. You need to know when something was completed or when something was assigned. Because if it was assigned 2 months ago, 3 months ago, might not be valid anymore, or it's gone on too long. A customer is going to be unhappy, or something isn't going to get completed correctly. So in the notes, I also have this wonderful little button where I can simply click the little calendar icon, and it places the current date and time. Now, that can be adjusted also back in the preferences. So the formatting, you can see I like to read the full day, name of the month, the date, the year, etc. So that can all be formatted if you want just numbers or you want a 24-hour clock, what have you. But now I know when I made that reservation. And of course, in the note, I can just hit enter and maybe I'll even go shift enter to clear out the dinner reservations. We'll be at whatever the name of the restaurant is, XYZ, 7 p.m., etc. So again, just keeping track of a little bit of additional information, maybe a confirmation number can go right in there, or even a link to that restaurant's website, the map, what have you, can be added as an attachment right here within the thought. So I really, really love that timestamp. We're going to talk a little bit more about setting important dates in your brain in just a moment, but that's the first component of time recognition that I want to specify. It's just the simplicity of creating a checklist and actually time stamping when an action took place. very important. Maybe not so much obviously here. I don't need to know when I took that dinner reservation, but in a business environment, when an action item was completed or assigned is often just as crucial as the action item itself. So, and as you can see, I can select and delete content at any time as well. So that was all fabricated. I want to keep this this area of my brain very clean because this is my real brain, and this is my checklist. So just recently, another action item that I can check off the list is making Spencer's desk. My oldest son, Spencer, is a young teenager. He's got a new desk, and I'm an amateur woodworker, so I just made a desk for my son because he's getting some desk tabletop related items for Christmas. So he's got a new desk for his room. So that has been completed. I can check that off the list. But before I do that, I want to share another feature with you in the notes, is that you can sometimes link content within your notes to other thoughts. So in the desk that I made for Spencer for Christmas, it's not a Christmas gift. It's sort of a existing task that needed to be completed before Christmas. So I don't want it or need it linked to my Christmas thought. But I am referencing Spencer's desk, which I know is a thought elsewhere in my brain here in my notes. So I can actually select any content. It doesn't have to be the actual name of the thought. I'll select the whole line, make Spencer's desk. And next to the link, so I can hyperlink some content to the web, but I'm going to link it to an existing thought. And by default, it tries to find a thought called make Spencer's desk. It didn't find it. But if I type in Spencer's name, you can see I've got a lot of Spencer thoughts in my brain. There's Spencer's desk. So I'm going to double click, make Spencer's desk. And now if I'm reviewing my list, oh yes, here's an action item where the checklist of that process is located in a different area of my brain. I can simply click that little paperclip icon, and it takes me over to the thought in my woodworking area of my brain under kid stuff. You can see my brain goes all the way back to when I was making cribs and changing tables. Now I've got a teenager and I'm making them office furniture. But you can see Spencer's desk down below. I've got a couple of different designs I was keeping track of, or just my wife and I were trying to decide exactly what the desk was going to look like, etc. So some design ideas down below. And once again, I always just make that real simple checklist. Here's all the parts that I needed. This has been going on for just a little over a month, but I got the pre-built legs ordered and sent, so they've got some fancy legs, and then I basically did all the assembly and checked off everything along the way. So now I'll go down to my past thought list and just jump right back over to my Christmas thought. And once again, I can check that item off the list. So Spencer's desk just got completed earlier this week, actually, but I was waiting to check that off the list for today's webinar. And as you can see, there's still 3 more pending items sort of on my holiday checklist. But let's go ahead and talk about some other features of the application down below. Here's the next one I wanted to mention was icons and zoomable images and adding file attachments. So here you can see under Christmas cards down below, I've got links to U.S. Postal Service, so I can keep track of what hours are available, any type of shipping. I typically come into this area of my brain. I've got old Christmas lists. One I just called old list. There's 2017, but my wife just recently updated the list and emailed that to me. I actually dropped a copy of it on my desktop, and there it is sitting on my desktop. So I'm going to move this file into my brain. There are many, many different ways to bring pieces of content, pieces of information into your brain. Drag and drop being probably obviously the easiest. I've got an existing document. I want to move it into my brain. I simply click and drag that right into the brain. I'm going to drop it underneath Christmas cards. And as you can see, it left the original there, but now I've got my 2018 Christmas labels. And I can click and launch that. I'm not going to launch that file because it actually has a lot of addresses and things like that in it. But I can launch that in its native application and print it out, copy paste, etc., whatever I need to do with it. So drag and drop by default will move a copy of the original file into the brain. I want to share with you how I typically move content into the brain. There's two other ways to show you. So I'm actually going to hold down my Shift key and right click on 2018 Christmas labels and select to delete. By holding down the Shift key, I bypassed forgetting the thought. Forgetting a thought is the safety net for the brain. If you just right click on a thought, let me just go back and do that. I'll right click and notice I can go straight to forget. So forgetting a thought is sort of like the brain's recycle bin. It's not permanently deleted. The file is still there. If you need to recover it, the thought is still there. All the links and relationships and attributes to that thought are still there. And you can go through and review your forgotten thoughts to remember them or then permanently delete them. In this case, I know I want to delete this thought. So I'm going to, once again, press Shift, nice little shortcut to delete a thought. So I deleted my 2018 Christmas labels. And I'm going to change a setting in my brain. This is typically the setting that I have, but I'm going to click on Options and go back into Preferences, where you can really modify how you want the brain to behave for your environment. So there's a lot of different settings that you can review in here to customize your brain. But under the Behavior tab, you can specify how you want the brain to behave for drag and drop. So when you're moving data and files into your brain to collect all of your documents for the project you're working on, do you want just copies to the original? Maybe the original is out on the X drive and other people, other colleagues of yours at your office have access to them. Therefore, moving them into the brain is not a great idea. You might want to link those files. So you just have shortcuts from your brain back to wherever those files exist and reside within your network. In my scenario, I want to move this file into the brain. I prefer to move everything into my brain because I sync my brain to the brain cloud for online access. I can access my brain from any computer that's on the internet around the world, and I can even access from my iPhone and mobile devices as well, which if we have time, I'll share those with you today as well. So I'm going to just change the setting, move file into brain, and now notice the difference when I drag and drop 2018 Christmas labels. That file no longer exists on my desktop. It's been moved as an internal attachment inside my brain. So I can always come back and modify this thought. And once again, we can keep notes that are related to the document or the file attachment. Make sure we have the updated address for the Smiths. So friends move from time to time, and I just want to make a quick note. You know, my wife might not have caught the change. I just want to make a note about who we're adding to the list or what addresses have changed, et cetera. Again, something that you really can't do on a typical file and folder structure to make additional notes that aren't part of the actual document itself. The document itself is actually laid out so that I can put these through the printer on a certain Avery number, and it prints out actual shipping labels. So a note like this has no place in that document. I'd get a shipping label with my little scribbles and notes on it. So that, of course, goes in the notes area. And notice also, every time I add a note to a thought, it adds this nice little icon. So I always know, before I even click on a thought, whether or not there's going to be a note on that thought. Now, I don't need this note. I just made that Smith name up. So I'll delete that content, and you can see in just a moment it'll update, and there's the icon is gone from that particular thought. So let's also talk about images associated with thoughts. Now, when it's a Word document, spreadsheet, etc., I get just an image, and I can click to launch that file attachment. But in many cases, I'm actually attaching a picture, an image of whatever it is I'm researching, or a screenshot of a problem that I'm looking into, and I want to know what the screen looks like or what have you. And in this case, it's possible contenders, I would call them, for our 2018 Christmas cards. So I've got family pictures. I've got a bunch of old, you can see 2012 documents. I never delete anything. I just simply I think this is going to be an old JPEG. It might take a little moment to load that up. But I've got a few different images to select from. There's the family with the Christmas tree, etc. So quite often I'm attaching an image, and the brain gives you that really, really nice preview in the content window of images. And you can also capture images and add them as a zoomable icon. You may have noticed on my Christmas thought, when I hover over, it's got just a nice little Christmas tree there. Many of my thoughts have zoomable icons. Sometimes, such as for UPS or FedEx, it's the image that appears on the actual web page. I think they call those the favicon or favicon. So the brain will try and pick up if this website that you've linked to a thought has a favicon and show that as well. So again, just helpful additional context. And of course, my classic Christmas card for my boys when they were much younger, connected to that Christmas card thought. So I mentioned earlier we're going to be talking a little bit more about time. And let's do that now. And for time, we're going to start talking about reminders within the brain. Here I've got an area under Christmas for holiday activities. Whether it's a party we're going to, events at my kids' school, over on the right, my family, we always do this goofy gift exchange, sort of if you're familiar with the white elephant gift exchange, goofy presents that are wrapped up. And instead of just drawing names out of a hat, we all wear a badge that says Santa or Mrs. Claus, Baby New Year, Vixen, Jack Frost, etc., to just make it more Christmassy. So I just keep my list right there on holiday activities in the notes. Makes it really easy to just copy and paste and print that out when the time is necessary. But notice down below, not only do I have notes on many of these thoughts, so if I go to dinner with the Carters, for example, I've got a little note. As you can see, I've pasted in or just typed in the date, December 14th. A couple of the games that I know we'll be playing and white elephant gift ideas. This, again, at their party, we do the same thing where we give away sort of silly things. In this case, it's leftover things that you don't use anymore. And I've got this old black and white TV in the basement that I'll be bringing to the party. So I made a note there in the notes area. But also notice it has the little calendar icon appearing on the thought. That is because there is an event associated with this thought. So let's take a moment to talk about the brain's timeline, where the brain itself can actually remind you of upcoming events, and you can keep track of your projects, how long tasks are taking, when tasks are due, etc. I open the timeline by clicking on this button right next to the search. That opens up the brain timeline down below. And I also sync my timeline with my Google Calendar. Now, this is a feature of the Brain Pro combo. So you would need to upgrade to the Brain Pro combo. If you're just a free user of the Brain or the Brain Pro, you won't be able to add events to the Brain timeline and then sync that to your Google Calendar. So I've got my Brain, my personal Brain, synced with my Google Calendar. My Google Calendar is then set up to send me reminders. You've got a holiday event to go to tomorrow. You've got a party coming up. You've got dinner reservations, etc. So as you can see, it takes me directly to today's dates down below. So Thursday, December 13th, the little line that you see there is the current time. If I zoom in with my mouse wheel, you can see I'm in Central Time Zone right now, so it's right around 1:30. And these are all of the events and that I have outlined, past events that are grayed out. So in other words, I update a little running schedule, a running log I have in my brain. Atwater School event, my kids event. Notice I can click, and that takes me to my Atwater School event. So I had a school event with my kids last night, and we've got another one coming up, this Winterfest, a little outdoor activity thing that happens with the kids. So I'm keeping track of events, and the brain is reminding me of when these events take place. And of course, here on the little 3 bars on the far right is where you would click to set up your Google Calendar settings. We've got a video tutorial on this process. I won't actually go through and set up my calendar. It's already set up. But I just want to let you know where particular buttons are so you can synchronize your brain's timeline with the Google Calendar. And notice I can scroll through December. I've got quite a busy month in December. Again, you click on any particular event and it will take you to that thought. So you can review the notes that you have, etc. And I saved one so that we could set it up together. So Christmas Eve dinner with my family. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this particular thought. And I do want to create a new event. Again, I could come down below and click and drag to create a new event in the calendar. It'll create an event for as long as I drag for hours, days, weeks, etc. Or I can simply activate the thought, Christmas Eve dinner. I click on the plus sign. This is where I can attach Word documents, etc., or create new templates, file types to attach to a thought. In this case, I'm creating an event, and it's Christmas Eve dinner. I could have description and notes down below. This is really helpful if I am if I get the reminder on my phone through Google. But typically, I keep all of the notes in my brain. I've got my brain on my phone too, so I keep all the notes there rather than writing them in the event description. So I'm going to select the date, and so Christmas is the 25th, so the 24th, and our dinner starts at 5 p.m. and usually goes till around, we'll just say 11. So that's my event, and then I also can set up a reminder. And this is really, really a great feature. Once again, not only just for the brain, but for project management, to get events off of your mind and into your digital brain. So it's your digital brain's responsibility, your digital brain, which will never fail and will remind you when a particular project needs to be completed or a meeting is about to take place, etc. So I want my reminder, I can say 10 minutes prior. I'm actually going to click on the drop down and say 21 days prior. And I'm only just picking this because I want you to see what the actual event reminders look like. So 21 days, which it already is, prior to December 24th, I'll receive my Christmas Eve dinner reminder. There's no save button. I can select a color so that it appears in a particular color in the calendar down below. Sometimes I do red events for basically really important things, yellow for not so important, etc. So you can see the Atwater School, there's one down below that was yellow. That's because it's just an outdoor sort of, let's go sledding, let's play in the snow and have some hot chocolate. It's very cute. This holiday parade was red. We never miss it. I didn't want to miss it, so I made it in red so I wouldn't forget when I'm just reminded by looking at events in my brain. So I select that one as red and click away, and it saves that event. And actually slid the calendar, I'm not sure if you noticed, but it slid the timeline over to that particular day, and presto, there is the event reminder. So, and my phone is going off as well because the reminders happen on Google. My brain is synced to Google Chrome, and it's synced in the background, so I'm already receiving a past due reminder for this event. So now, from the brain, I can actually click to modify. I'll actually just say snooze there. And now I can click the pencil. I don't need to be reminded 21 days. I'll just say 1 day before. And these event reminders, a lot of times we're asked, why did we pick 7, 14, 21, 28? That is to be sort of in sync with Google Calendar settings. So those are the Google Calendar settings you have for events. And so we adopted those for the brain so that the two are completely compatible. There, and so I've modified so I won't receive that pop-up reminder again until a day before the event. So those are the calendar settings. I'm also going to share with you, I can see I'm okay on time. I want to bring a couple of web pages and some web content into this brain as well. Notice that on my Christmas Eve dinner thought, on the notes, I've got my kids and I do a thing called an appetizer tree. I won't go into it. It's a crazy little appetizer dish that we do. But I recently cooked a turkey breast on the grill. It turned out great. And here is my link that I found online. Notice that falls under Weber Grill, where I keep track of cooking and Thanksgiving and outdoors and things like that. So it's connected to an entirely different separate branch of my brain, but I'll be doing this for Christmas Eve this year as well. So I've got a link so I can watch my video, or on the video here, let's let this load up just so you can see what it looks like. I not only have just some notes over on the right, and I'm looking over here to see what you're seeing on your screen. I see you're a little behind what I've been clicking on. So I've got just a couple of highlights indirect heat, 300 degrees, hour and a half, what the internal temp should be, etc. And then on the actual file attachment is the web page. And so this, whenever you connect a Vimeo or a YouTube web page to a thought in the brain assumes the reason why you're connecting to that is because you want to watch the video. And so there's the video ready to go. I can just click play and actually watch the video right here in the brain. So sometimes I take my laptop into the kitchen with me or what have you, and I can just launch the video, or my phone or iPad, and just right from the brain watch that video, take a couple of notes, check on whatever it is that needs to be reviewed. So another great feature of connecting content to the brain. So let's go ahead and bring some more content in. Let's say I wanted to also grill some portobello mushrooms. We do have some vegetarians coming, so not all about turkey. We want to, let's say, portobello. On the grill. So I created the thought first, and now in the brain, I just click on F4 on my keyboard. It's the shortcut that I use for search web. So the brain is going to use Google to search the web. Maybe I'll change this to Bing. You can edit and make your own search engine. Maybe I only want to search for videos. So I'm going to search YouTube for portobello mushrooms on the grill. I'll go ahead and search. And so that opens up in my default browser, YouTube, with the search criteria of portobello mushrooms on the grill. And in a moment, hopefully we'll have some results. There we go. So marinated, how to grow portobello mushrooms Tuesday. Oh, this looks like it has cheese in it. I really like that. But let's go just with marinated. So here's my video in YouTube. And I'm just going to drag and drop. And you can do this with any URL, not just YouTube. Oh, let's stop the video there. Stop. There we go. So that's just a little preview. But you can do this with any URL, wherever you find your recipe, find your research, what have you. In your browser, on the address bar, just click and drag the icon that appears in your address bar right into the brain, and it's going to give you a link directly back to that specific web page. It renames the thought with whatever is showing up in the content tab. So marinated and grilled, blah, blah, blah. And there's the thought in my brain. Now, this should have been under Christmas Eve dinner. So I'm going to click and drag to link that to Christmas Eve dinner, and then right click and unlink from that thought. There we go. Oh, I should have connected it to that existing thought. I added it as a new child. So I'll just forget that. So marinated and grilled portobello. So I've cleaned up that area really quickly. And then over on the notes, research ones with cheese. So sorry, that's the non-vegetarian in me wanting to add cheese to an otherwise vegetarian dish. But regardless, I can keep a couple of notes down there. Maybe I want to even check with my guests, my family that are vegetarians, see if they eat cheese. I don't think they do. But regardless, again, I'm keeping notes in context with data that I found on the web, all in a specific area of my brain, rather than just keeping web pages in this long scrolling list on my browser, bookmarks, and favorites. One last component in this area that I want to share with you is maybe I want to have an image of this content. So I still have, nope, I don't have that open. Let's go back. There's the image that I want. It doesn't look as appetizing as I thought. I like these mushrooms down below. So I am going to, from the brain, I right click and select to capture an image. And maybe I want to do just all three of those. So notice I'm dragging and dropping. Hopefully this is in sync on your machine. I get a little crosshair. When I say capture image, my brain minimizes. I get crosshairs where I can drag and drop, and I select those three images, and now I've got this nice zoomable icon back on the brain. I'll let the screen catch up so that it'll come back to the brain window. There it is. And now when I mouse over that thought, I've got that nice zoomable icon of the different recipes or food items or what have you. So it's really nice in many scenarios to add that visual reference of that data, whether your project is renovating your kitchen, again, very visual, what kind of tile, what kind of floor surface, etc., or just a troubleshooting project in the IT department, and you say, need to take pictures of when your screen looks like this, or what does a USB port look like versus mini HDMI versus HDMI, etc. So you want images to remind yourself or educate the people that you'll be sharing your brain with. Those images sometimes play a very, very important part, and the zoomable icons make it super, super easy in the brain to add that additional layer of context to your projects. So I think the final component that I wanted to share with you is setting up some thought tags. Quite often in projects, we want to assign whether it is priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, etc., or where it is along the way. It's in stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And we do that in the brain with what we call tags. And I've got a list of existing tags. Again, this is my real brain. My business brain has different types of tags. And in my brain, you can see I create a little star system. That's my little ranking system. Is it 1 star? 1 star, I've got, as you can see, a grumpy icon versus 5 stars, smiley face icon. And then also, separate from that, I have priority levels. Is it medium priority, top priority? If it's low priority, in my case, then it's not important. I don't even need to tag it. So I just keep track of top priority items and medium priority items. So let's say that one of my top priorities is, not dinner with the Carters. I'm going to go to that Christmas Eve dinner. I really want to research and figure out if I'm going to be doing these marinated portobello mushrooms. They look delicious, so I think I probably will. I'm going to make this a top priority. So this is going to be some research that I do in my brain when I get a little bit of free time. I'm just going to right-click on this thought and select to assign a tag. So I'll set the tag of top priority. And notice it added the little tag icon, and when I mouse over, I'm reminded that it's top priority. You can also click on a thought to open up the thought properties and assign thought types and thought tags. The difference between thought types and thought tags are that you can only assign one thought type. If I had a thought type called food, and I've got food in many different areas of my brain. Here it's in a holiday area, I've got cooking areas, I've got camping areas where I talk about food that's easy to, I research food that's easy to take camping, etc. So food pops up in many different areas. I don't just have one food thought and all my recipes are right there. They're segmented out according to where I'm eating that food. Am I grilling it? Am I cooking it? Is it a restaurant, etc.? So it's in many different areas. So I could create a thought type called food. I don't have one, but I certainly could. And this would be thought typed food or recipe. But it's currently a top priority because I want to research it a little bit more so I get the right marinade, or get the right sauces, etc. It's a top priority. And the great thing about this being top priority, I'm reminded when I come to the thought, but also in this particular brain from time to time, I'll simply go to my thought or my thought type or thought tag of top priority. So you can see I'm researching getting some Bucks tickets, Milwaukee Bucks my kids are into, so I'm researching that. Door County Triathlon that I want to sign up for. Here, this is an interesting one, the dentist. It is a top priority, but as you can see, it also gets 1 star. I don't like going to the dentist, but that doesn't mean I don't have to do it. I know that I do. So it's both top priority and 1 star. Multiple tags assigned to a single thought. And let's say, and I really do want to switch this, so I'm actually going to right-click on the tag and replace the tag top priority with, we'll make that medium priority. So as you can see, it disappeared. It went over and it's now linked under medium priority events. So good. Took care of that dentist trip that I didn't want to do. And of course, here is my marinated grilled portobello mushroom. So that's one of my top priorities. So again, thought tags. And as you can see, they're not cluttering up the screen. They're out of view. They only show up when I mouse over that particular thought. and yet they're still very effective. So you can set up all your phase 1 projects, phase 2, phase 3, and review all projects that are in that stage or that particular phase. Another really, really great way to classify information, in this case, in this scenario, without the need of seeing extra links being visualized on the screen. I don't need to see this connected to its parent thought of top priority. I like it appearing just there when I mouse over, and I can click right there to activate to see what my other top priority items are. And of course, once I have researched that, I can right click and I can remove that tag. I do want to keep this a top priority though, so I'll go right back, tag, top priority, because I am really going to look into that. So hopefully I've shared with you a couple of great ways to get started with your projects, to define them within the brain, visualize all the relationships, and easily access all the different types of information that are going into your projects. Important dates, important notes, even links to people, links to websites, etc., all within one trusted source. And finally, since today was a holiday themed event, I'm going to actually change my wallpaper. Again, another really great feature of the brain is being able to customize it. There's so many features that you can do in the preferences, the brain preferences, to make the brain behave in a way that reflects your own personal thinking or the subject matter of the brain. And since I'm in the holiday spirit, and today was a holiday themed project management event, I'm actually going to change the wallpaper here in my brain as well. So I'm actually going to go out and search the web. We'll start from the web. Rather than starting from the brain, this time we'll start from the web. And I'm going to search for, we'll say, holiday lights wallpaper. And then I'll go to images. And typically when I'm looking for images, I'm looking for something that isn't so contrasty, like really bright with really dark, or really busy lines, something like this. I might not be able to see my thoughts very well. So I usually scroll through whenever I'm looking for a wallpaper, and I try to find something a little more subtle or muted. This might work. Oh, here's something I really like. I think I like that. Let's see if this works. So I'm going to go to a larger image. Looks good. I like it. I'm going to right click and just copy that image onto my clipboard. And in the brain, I can right click in the background and select paste wallpaper. So, and sometimes it takes one or two different tries to, if something is a little too busy, that might be a little busy. That's that's an explosion of holiday festiveness there in the background. But it's kind of fun. I like it. Maybe I'll play around with this for a little while. I can also right click on the background and go into the brain theme and change the colors of my links to make them stand out, or what colors my thoughts are. Here it's really the links that I don't see very well. So I'm going to just change my links from being a really light blue to really deep dark red. Maybe I'll just go even lighter then. There we go. I kind of like that. So that might work nice. I'll go ahead and close that. And we'll play around with this for a little while to see if this works out for my my holiday theme. But again, you can choose whatever type of wallpaper you'd like for all of your different themes, or different brains rather, and change them up at any time. The last component that I want to share with you today is that I'm going to sync this brain to the cloud. You may have noticed while I was using the brain and modifying this particular brain, my sync would kick off in the background because I was making changes. So my brain is syncing up to app.thebrain.com. And so I can actually open up our brain website. And from the brain, there is a login in the upper right-hand corner. I think I'm already logged in. I usually am. And I'll log in for access to all of my brains that I have synced to the cloud. So I mentioned earlier, because I'm keeping all of my attachments internal within my brain, I'll have access to them here from app.thebrain.com. And if I scroll through, we'll see if it's updated my wallpaper. Here's my Lore Bloom brain. Hasn't updated my wallpaper quite yet. I'll refresh a few times and it will. But also, let me get my, find me. There's me. So here is my phone with a lovely picture of my dog on it. And I'm going to log in and access my brain. So there's a little bit of glare here, but you can see that I am opening up my brain, and not only do I have access from a web browser, but I've got access from my brain as well, or from my mobile device. And so there it went right into the last brain that I had open. That was a business brain. We'll jump out of there and jump into my personal brain. So here you can see I'm under restaurants on a thought called Mod. This is a pizza place in my neighborhood. And on the notes, I keep track of the orders. So if I have to pick up pizza for the whole family, I know what my kids get, what my wife orders, etc. And I keep track of that information because it's a long customized list that changes often. But all of that, again, accessible right here from my mobile device. And it's not just the notes as well. I've got access to all the images, file attachments, web links, etc., all sitting in my pocket. Everything that goes into my brain, all that data is just a tap away on my iPhone. So one of the advantages of upgrading to the Brain Pro Combo and then keeping the brain in sync on app.thebrain.com. So I think that's everything that I wanted to share with you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and seeing how the brain can be used in different atmospheres. In today's scenario, project management. I selected a more personal approach today for project management, but join us again in the future for other webinars where we take on really sort of heavy business criteria, how to keep track of file management, etc., in business environments, IT networks, etc. Today was a little bit more of a holiday festive theme. You will receive a link to a recording of today's webinar, again, as well as a link to that first sample brain that I clicked through, just so you have a brain that you can play around with on the topic of project management. And we did get a few questions come into the question panel. So I'm going to see if I can get through a couple of these very, very quickly. The first was Kenneth that asked, can one search for all unchecked items from a set of checklists? Kenneth, that's a great, great question. So I actually have a process for that. And that is, and I don't keep it here in my personal brain because I'm not so concerned about if I don't have a particular item checked off the list yet. This is just recreational brain. It's not so urgent that I get everything checked off every list here. But in my business brain, I actually create a thought tag, and I've got two thought tags called unfinished and finished. It's that simple, and I'll even create it here since you can see here's a checklist that is unfinished. So I'm going to click and go under tags. I'm going to create a new tag called unfinished. You could call it whatever you want, incomplete, open checks, open checkboxes, whatever really works for you. So there's my new tag called unfinished. And I'm actually going to edit this tag too. So I'm going to click and open up the properties for this tag to add an icon from my icon list. So I'll select stock icon. Your stock icon list will look a little bit different. Mine is a customized list that I've built and created. But these are all my business items. And so unfinished, let's see what I'm looking for. Maybe I'll go down into UI. And here we go. We've got unfinished, maybe a pencil. Oh, I love the check boxes, a big red X. That's perfect. So unfinished items, checklists will have this little red checkbox there, whereas something that's finished or completed, like Spencer's desk, I'll create a new tag there called finished. So, and finished will also get a little icon. Select stock icon. Hopefully this is all keeping up. I see that the screen is a little bit behind mine. Now I want a nice checkbox. I'll take the round circle. So now I've set up two different thought tags, unfinished and finished. So if I want to review, anytime I create a new a thought with some checklist items, it's automatically going to be unfinished. I am going to manually say this is an unfinished task. Therefore, I can just go up to my reports or my tag and say, all right, show me all unfinished tasks. Or I can open up reports, and in reports, you can say, all right, show me all of my thought types or tags. And here we can check things on or off the list. So I'm looking specifically for, oops, those are thought types. Let's look at thought tags that are unfinished and typed urgent. Or what I can do a combination, in other words. So here you can see, hopefully it's showing up. I've got a little plus sign. This says, show me a list of everything that's unfinished. Show me a list of everything that is not checked as unfinished. So plus, minus, you can play around with those to find exactly what you need. And of course, there it is, all my unfinished tasks, and it's just one. It's this thought for Christmas, and then I can see the unfinished tasks. So a few extra steps. There's no report just to go in and say, hey, show me all of my unchecked items. Just make a really simple tag to take care of that for you. All thoughts that get checklists get the tag, and that tag isn't removed or changed until everything on your checklist is done. And Eric had the next question, what is the upload limit for attachments? And is it per brain or per account? So Eric, right now we don't actually have any limits being specified. So the only limits actually that are happening are in the length of the file name, and that's a Windows issue, not a Brain issue, because you are syncing to our servers, our Microsoft Azure, and so there's something like 266 character limits. So there is a limit to how long the actual file name can be or the thought name can be, but there's no limit to the actual size. So don't worry about that. And if we notice someone is trying to upload a terabyte brain or something, we'll probably contact them directly to work things out. In the past, our limits were, I believe, 20 gigs. So your account was 20 gigs. And very, very rarely would anyone typically get up to that. So we like to, data is all different sizes. We like to be able to support you regardless of the type of data that you may be using. And Doug, looks like had a long question. Doug asked, can different links or thought relationships be saved for dynamic relationships? For example, I have 3 thoughts. 1 goes to 2, goes to 3. During the project, I needed to reverse the parent-child relationship so that the thoughts are ordered 3, 2, 1. Well, Doug, dynamically, like in other words, do they automatically change? No, but you certainly can manually change them. So, for instance, if I wanted past Christmases down below, I can click and drag, and there it's linked down below. Nothing is ever permanent in the brain. You can always go back and edit and modify. If I want it to be the parent thought up above, then I just click and drag, and it goes right up on top. And I see all of its child thoughts there, 2010, 2008, 2007, etc., over on the right. In this case, I just want a jump thought, so I move it back. And you may have noticed earlier that I clicked and dragged a link between 2 thoughts. I recategorized and then unlinked. So you can always right-click on a link between 2 thoughts and select unlink. And I can even say edit and undo my unlink. So past Christmases come back. So many different options as far as recategorizing or reorganizing your thoughts as need be as you're using the brain. And Computer Help, hi, thanks for joining Computer Help, a good friend of ours at the Brain. Laugh out loud, concur about the dreaded dentist. Thanks, I do as well. And I'll just answer, if I see a lot of questions now coming in, but we are on top of the hour, so I'll take about 5 more minutes to answer more questions, the questions that have come in so far. Todd had the next question. Any progress on being able to directly drag and drop from Outlook? Directly drag and drop, no progress. to report on quite yet. We do want to enhance Outlook integration with TheBrain in the future. That being said, just to be clear for everyone, drag and drop does work from Outlook. It's simply a two-step process. In fact, you can see I've got an Outlook email I received here on my desktop about a Volkswagen bus. And if I simply drag and drop that into TheBrain, it works just fine. So again, remember my setting was move files into TheBrain. So I did a drag and drop and it moved that file in. I actually want to keep this. This has nothing to do with Christmas. I'm using my own personal brain here for demoing. So I need to be careful. So this particular thought, or this particular attachment, I want to right click and move this file. I'll copy this. I'll leave this copy here, copy this file out of TheBrain, right back onto my desktop. So it'll appear there on my desktop. So for Outlook, whether it's a contact or an email or a calendar event, you can drag and drop onto your desktop and then into TheBrain. Also, each individual thought has a containing folder. So I can do this first. If I say open folder, so I open the folder for my Christmas thought. Now from Outlook, I can drag and drop right into this folder. And the image, or not the image, the file, the message is the word I'm looking for, will be added as a .msg file. That's message, and it'll be saved there internally in your brain as an internal MSG file. So open the thought folder and drag into that, or use the desktop. Just drag onto the desktop and then into TheBrain. It's a very, very complex algorithm for Outlook files, contacts, Outlook messages, etc. And so that's why we need this two-step process. But we are looking into simplifying that in the future, and potentially even trying some imports as well. So that's a question that comes up from time to time. This thought has no business under Christmas, so I am going to once again hold down my Shift key, right-click, and delete that Volkswagen email. The next question, there was Todd. Here's Jean asking, when I sync with an app, what is the, oh, sorry, I lost it. What is the download? What is really downloaded? Files, images, etc. when you sync with the app. So all of my internal attachments are synced up to the cloud. And I refer when you, maybe you're meaning when you sync to the app, you're talking about the desktop app or the iOS or Android app. So what is really syncing with the with iOS are all of the thoughts, all of the notes, thought names, the notes. The file attachments aren't synced to your app until they are called upon from your app. So in other words, on your mobile device, let's just say your iPhone, you open up your brain on an airplane that has no internet, but you've synced your brain, you've got access to all of your notes, you'll have access to all of your thoughts. You can do a search, it searches through the thought names, so you can find all of your content, your notes, but as soon as you come to that PDF file or that Word document and you try and launch it, then the app, the Brain app, is going to try and communicate with our server to grab that file. And we do that so that if you do have a 20 gig brain, you're not putting 20 gigs on your mobile device, on your phone. It's a very, very small bit of data, basically, to grab just the notes and the thought names. It's only going to grab a file attachment when it's called upon from the app. So that file attachment will be waiting on the server until it's called upon. So it makes the app much lighter, and it's just as long as you're aware of that. So if you know, ooh, while I'm on the airport or while I'm on my flight, I'm going to be reviewing this contract. So open up the contract while you still have Wi-Fi, and then get on the plane, turn on airplane mode, and you'll be able to access that document. Frank had the next question, which is, you have links to Office 365 Outlook emails now. Yes, Frank, as you saw, this was just an Outlook message from Outlook that I dragged onto the desktop. I don't use Outlook, I use Gmail. Each Gmail has a unique URL, so you can drag that URL into TheBrain for a link to your Gmail email. Outlook 365, I believe, has the same thing. I don't use 365 too often, but I'm familiar with it, and I'm familiar that all those documents have URLs, unique URLs. So you can very easily, if something is a unique URL, it can easily be pasted into the notes or drag and dropped into the Plex. So many different options for you once you're dealing with just simply URLs. And Jean also asked, if I have professional account with files attached to thoughts, what access does someone with a free account have to that content? That is a great question. So when I sync to the brain, by default, your brain goes into auto sync mode. So anytime you're making changes in the brain, just as you saw today, my brain was updating and syncing to get the latest, greatest available on the cloud. What is on the cloud is all of the data, all of the internal attachments. Who has access to that? Just me with my username and password. So if I click on online, and I'm even doing this with my personal brain. This brain has all my finance information, everything. If I go into brain access and sharing, you can see that I am not allowing public access. If anyone else tries this URL, they will not get to my brain. If I check this box, allowing public access to my brain, and if you know this URL, then you'll be able to get there. Then you'll be able to open the brain. So if you want to share a brain with someone, a non-brain user, as we jokingly like to call, you can make your brain publicly accessible, and then they have to have the URL. This URL and that content, it's not being indexed by Google. So in other words, doing a search for Spencer's Desk or Laura Bloom Furniture, if this was a publicly accessed brain, would not show up in any search engines. So you've got to know this sort of convoluted URL. The brain has to be public in order for someone else to access your brain. I can also, if you are a brain user, or even if you're not, I can type in an email address. So my wife at blah, blah, blah. So I can type in her email, and it'll send Laura an email welcoming her to this brain. Then if she has a brain account, she would be able to log in and see my brain online as well. And that's if I manually type in an email address. So a couple of different options for sharing brains. There's also the step up from there, which is Team Brain, and Team Brain allows multiple people to edit the same brain. So everyone is collaborating, and when you're running reports, you're finding out who modified thoughts and when. So there's accountability for each individual thought, etc. That's a more advanced feature. That's Team Brain. Send a note into support@thebrain.com if you want to know more about Team Brain. And then finally, do any of the administrators, such as myself, I've got administrator access to the server where people are syncing their brains. I still don't have access to your content. I can see that this email address has an account. I can see that they're syncing a brain. I can see the brain names, but I can't see any of the data. And that is true for all of the staff at the Brain Technologies. We would be out of business if we were looking at your data. So we don't, and we make it so that we can't. You have to log in with your password in order to access data that you've uploaded in the brain. So, and if you want to know more about security and how we salt and hash the passwords and the cipher encryption, etc., that goes on, send a note into support@thebrain.com, and we'll answer all those questions for you. We're very proud of our how secure the brains are that you're syncing to our cloud, and very aware that that's a sensitive topic for some people, obviously, for obvious reasons. So feel free to send in a note, and we'll send you some further details on our security. And let's just take another quick question. We're over time here, but really quickly, Christian had a question. Can the sorting behavior be changed on numbered list? It's not using numerical sorting, but alphabetical. Example 10 comes before 9. So Christian, that's another great example. And yes, 10 does show up before 9. So I always recommend, if you're sorting with numbers, you simply say 0, 1, 0, 2. I do 0, 0, and I leave spaces between thoughts. And I'll share this wonderful, we'll end on this note, because this is a really great tip. Let's say this list down below, this grouping of thoughts, I want to order this. I want kitchen designs to come first, then talk about suppliers, then talk about parts lists, then talk about contractors, then talk about this. So it's phases of the project that you're working on. There is a hidden ordering system that you can set up within the brain. So you're not seeing 01 contractors, 02 kitchen designs. And that's as simple as putting a dot or a period in front of the number. So I would say .001 kitchen designs. Now when I go back, you can see kitchen designs is first on the list. The next thing I want to always review is the timeline way over here. So I'm going to click and modify this thought name. So I say, now I could say .002. I like to leave a little space in case some new step in a process comes along. The answer review board is now phase 2. I don't have to renumber every thought that comes after that. So I'm going to say 005. Oops, didn't get my space in there. Let me do that. There we go. And as you can see, when I put a dot in front of the numbers, it doesn't appear, it's on the thought name. So if I alt click to open up the properties, I can see it's 001, but it's not appearing there in the Plex. Number 3 is just going to be the budget. So I'll alt click to open that up. And so now I'll say .010. Notice I'm going in increments of 5. So again, if a step comes along that needs to go in between these two, I don't have to rename or renumber everything further on down the list. So definitely play around with that feature. If parts of a process or steps of a procedure are very important to you, sometimes that hidden numbering system is the way to go. And yes, as far as just saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, and if you get up to 100, etc. That's why I always do 3 digits in mine, just so it's very clear: 001, 002, 003, etc. So it works out great. So enjoy that hidden numbering system. And I'm sorry, a lot more questions came in as we were going. I think most of them are thanks, but just really quickly, one more from Christian. Is there a way for icons to be merged between 2 thought types and combine them, such as flags and people, etc.? A way for icons to be merged between 2 thought types. I think that would be a manual process. If you're adding icons to thought types and you wanted the same one for both, yeah, I can't think of a way other than manually changing that. Or Christian, maybe I'm not understanding the question. Christian, I recognize the name. Thanks for joining today. Another longtime friend of TheBrain. So maybe I'm not understanding the question correctly, but in other words, personal projects, if I click and open this up, you can see it's got a little heart icon. If I want that heart icon to appear somewhere else, or if I need to get to that heart icon because it exists where, maybe it was a custom icon that I added, I would then open up the thought folder. So open folder, and there's going to be a little inside the .data. It's going to be a little file called icon.png file there. So all of the icons for whether it's a thought type, a tag, or an individual thought itself, that's where that icon is going to be. So if you need to, you mentioned merging it, but if you want to copy it and use that again on another file type, that's where you get to the file. I can right click and just put this on my clipboard. So I'll copy image. Where do I see copy image? Create. Why don't I see it? Oh, copy. It's just copy. And then I can go to another thought, list of parts, right click, and paste icon. So I've added that heart to my list of parts thought as well. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, again, and anyone that has another question, or if it's a question I didn't get to today, because we could keep going for another 20 minutes, but I realize we're well over the hour now. Please feel free at any time to write into support@thebrain.com. We've got a fantastic support team. We're happy to answer any questions you may have. And that's true regardless of whether you're a free version of TheBrain or Pro Combo or Team Brain user. Support at TheBrain is free. Pick up the phone. You'll always talk to a person at TheBrain, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. So feel free to contact us in the future at any time. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. You'll be receiving a link to today's recording, as well as this sample brain that I have open right now that you can play around with. And if there's any other brains that you're interested in, we've got a nice link on our website. If you go to thebrain.com/apps, APPS, there's some other recordings on different topics. If you're looking for a more professional environment of the brain being used in business or IT or what have you, we've got some sample brains there and sample recordings as well. So thanks again for joining me for today's holiday-themed webinar on smarter project management. And everyone have a wonderful weekend, and most importantly, have a wonderful and magical holiday season. Thanks, everyone.